We were just turned 20 and 21 years old, and we're averaging, Jesus, $50,000, $75,000 a night as kids. And then there was the third part of the trilogy, which was Everglades City. All three stories were done fairly well, but when it came to the Everglades City portion of it, they totally missed the story. Because the Everglades City, as far as anybody that knows the history or knows anything about it, was the pot smuggling hub of North America at that time, and nobody knew it. This is one of the most beautiful things about this story. It's a nonviolent, family-oriented, kids grew up one right after the other, learning how to smuggle without a gun being shot. That's one of the most likable things about the story that I'm proud of.
Right.
As you know, growing up as a kid like that. But
I hate to interrupt you, it's at this point you're just working on the boat. At some point, you basically take over the operation. Like right. We kind of jumped that.
Well,
we kind of skipped that. We started talking about how you bring in this and you this and you that, but that was. Like there was a bus that cleaned out a ton of people, and you kind of stepped in.
Oh yeah, there were several.
Okay, so I'm sorry. Right. That's why. So let's so we don't miss that.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Like when did that happen? Like you're still working the boat, and you're running like a crew, right? But you're still working for the top guys. At what point do they get knocked out?
When you talk about top guy, there really isn't a top guy. There's there were brothers who learned from the older guys, and when one of them had a job to do, everybody would work it, and they would work his, and he would work his, and it was kind of a family affair. You know, I got a job, let's all work in the back. And it was kind of the thing where there was so much work going on that, people were taking turns. You work tonight, and Jimmy, you work tomorrow night, and then Teddy, you work Wednesday night, and then we'll go back and everybody gets a piece of the action, kind of a thing.
Well, I mean, if there's enough money and everybody doesn't get greedy and they just, you know what I'm saying, then things can work smooth.
We were just turned 20 and 21 years old, and we're averaging, Jesus, $50,000, $75,000 a night as kids. I mean, this is just what we knew. This is how we grew up.
I remember the news clipping that Colby and I watched. The nightly news, when one of them hit the nightly news, and they were talking to one of the local people. They're like, well, there was a lot of high priced vehicles. There was a lot of people building a lot of big houses. People are, you could just tell, like, there's like a, if you're in this town, even if you have nothing, there's no way you can not know what's going on. But even if you pretend to,
and she's like, so what?
Right. You can't miss all the brand new vehicles, all the brand, like 21, 22-year-old kids are not driving, Corvettes and brand new, trucks. And
well, see, here's an interesting thing about that, which isn't what brought the attention to the town in the first place. Not the trucks, not the cars, that sort of thing, because stone crabbing in and of itself is a very lucrative business. And if you're working and you're busting your ass on the back of one of those boats, I was making $1,500 a week, right. So, in some cases, the catches were that good. Plus, I'm making a salary, so I could afford to a degree certain things. But when it came to the really opulent things that made a difference, if that, for lack of a better way of putting it. You have all these, unremarkable trailers that people are living in. You drive down the island and you drive in and out of town and stuff like that. But it's when you open the door and walk in is when the difference is made. All the new appliances, all the new carpeting, all the new blinds and shades and, electronics. I mean, this is all inside this raggedy old fucking trailer. But to get to where I got, it was a bit of a serendipitous adventure where we had worked, and I wrote in the book, 28 nights in a row, and to the tune of, and I just did a rough calculation, to the tune of some 1.6 million pounds. One night we did 55 tons just to see if we could
do it right.
Could do it, And it was a couple days before that. See, I would go out and work in the evening because my job was unloading the boats at night. We'd come in, during the day with a catch. We'd unload the freighters, and we'd come in the next day with the crabs, kind of a thing. I had just got done with this 55 tons, and I figured I'd go over to the house to see how the loading is going on, because we load the houses and bring this stuff in at night, and we'd run it all to Miami during the day, broad daylight.
Right.
We're unloading this house, and we're sending cars and trucks. If they weren't loaded the night before, the vans, the cars, the trucks, or whatever it is, and they're driven into town and parked in somebody's driveway, and then they're sent at intervals by radio, they're getting loaded the next day, and then they're being sent off like that. Well, a couple of days prior to this huge load that we decided to do, one of the big bosses, Daryl, hands me and my buddy Jimmy a chainsaw and a wrecking bar and points to this brand new Winnebago and says, "Hey," he said, "I want you to go inside there and tear everything out of that damn thing. Everything from the windows down. Seats, cabinets, you just rip it out of there." So when you look at the thing, you could see the cabinets and the curtains and stuff, but if you got up in there and you look, there's nothing. There weren't even any drivers or passenger seats in this thing, and we put airbags in the springs and inflated them so the thing wouldn't compress, and they put just over 10,000 pounds of bales in this thing and stacked them right up level with the window. And they even took one out like this, pull it out so that the driver could sit down in between them and drive the damn thing, because there was no seat, right?
Right.
So lucky me, I go over there, see how things are going, and Daryl's standing and goes, "Hey, Timmy, come here." He goes, I need a favor. And I'm thinking, oh, God, here we go. And he says, I need someone that I trust that could drive this thing to Miami, because it can't go to where we typically need to take these vehicles. Now, the way it's done is the cars and the vans and the vehicles of that nature are given a particular plaza to go to over in Kendall or Coral Gables or someplace like that over in East Miami or West Miami.
Right.
You pull into this plaza, you get out, you go window shop for a while. One of our guys is on the other end with the Cuban partners pointing out which vehicles are ours coming into the parking lot. Our guys get out, their guys get in it, go and load it at the stash house in Miami.
Yeah, they take the vehicle, they unload it somewhere, they bring
it back. This is what now the United States government describes as a dead drop. We invented the dead drop. So that had a twofold effect. The guys in Miami didn't know where the shit was coming from in Everglades, and the guys in Everglades didn't know where the shit was going to Miami. So if anybody got nailed, nobody could tell anybody where the shit was at.
Right.
Because a lot of times the drivers isn't even at the house in Everglades where it's being loaded. He doesn't even own the thing. Drivers don't own the vehicles, and they don't own the boats.
Right.
There's a reason for that as well. So Daryl looks at me and he goes, "I need somebody to drive this thing over, because it's got to go right to the stash house. It can't go to the plaza, because, dude, you get within 30 feet of this thing, you can smell it, right?"
Right.
So reluctantly I did it, because, I just made 75 grand. I didn't need the cash. 35,000, he said. "I'll give you 35 grand. Just drive it over there. 2-hour drive. But I need you to stay over there and spend the day with the guys and drive a car full of money back,
right,
tonight." So, okay. So I drove this behemoth over there to Miami, and I spend the day with these guys, and, they're paying poker and this and that, just waiting out the day. And they give me a car, just jacked full of money. And it's even got airbags in the springs in this car, because, money's heavy, dude. You know this. So to keep the thing from sparking the highway, we've got airbags in this car full of money. So I drive this thing back. So consequently, I got to meet the Cuban crew that nobody ever met except the adults, the grown-ups.
Right.
Because the bail handlers and the drivers and that stuff never had to have to go to that house. They always went to the dead drop. Nobody ever met anybody. So I met this guy named Jorge and his buddy. So in 1983, the United States government rounds up over 250 federal agents from every branch of law enforcement under the United States Treasury, comes down to Everglades City and Naples, and locks down everything, and they start affecting arrests.
But you're not there.
Well, everybody's there at this time.
Oh, okay.
This is like 2 a.m.
I thought you had gone to Miami.
Oh,
already.
no. I'm skipping
I
forward.
thought you were in Miami.
I've met the Cuban guys now. Okay. Everybody's fixing to get busted. So Operation Everglades comes to town maybe 4 or 5 months later,
right.
6 months later.
Well, how did they get onto it? I'm just wondering, was it a...
Well, at that time, they had somebody moved into Everglades City for 2 years.
Oh, okay. They had an inside guy
They lived there
for 2 years?
For 2 years it took
Okay.
them. Because this is, we're talking about tight-knit shit going on here. Well, the intelligence of the first and second generations at that time was as such that they knew a week before they were coming and that they were coming. So when all these federal agents showed up on the island, nobody was around. It was a clown show, really.
Right.
They got several people, a few cars and stuff like that, but it wasn't the significant, bust that they thought it was going to be. So almost a year to the day, they came back again. Operation Everglades 2. This time, everybody knew it was happening. Everybody knew it was coming, and the older generations pretty much just sat out on the front porches in the middle of the night, smoked cigarettes, waiting for the show to start. And here they come. Another nearly 300 agents from I'm talking about CIA, FBI, FDLE, DEA, Customs, you name it, they were there. This time, they did pretty good because everybody kind of waited on them. They got the older generations of guys that they wanted. Some guys, they had to kind of wait for self-surrender and that sort of thing, but there were just so many of them that at this time, that's when Life magazine shows up to do their article. And it was a bit comical because the article, they were talking about, this small town. If I can just show it to them.
Yeah.
Yeah. This small town in Everglades, tarred with drug smuggling. If I can get to it here.
Plus, if you want, Colby, you can also put the picture up because it's actually online. Like that, this picture he's showing, it's actually online because I've already, I found it. You'll see it when and it's got Harrison Ford on the front cover.
Yeah. Yeah, this one. That's this issue. But here is an overview of the 10,000 islands. And it says, Everglades,
a South Florida town,
tarred with drug smuggling, and most of its 600 residents say, so what? Trouble in Everglades City. And these are a lot of my buddies getting arrested, going to prison here. But that was the second operation. That was in 1984. That was when they did some significant damage as far as getting the people that they wanted to get. But what they didn't understand at the time was the scope. The kids, we were doing all the work. The adults were just pointing and going, here, move this, move that load, move this load. All the kids.
When was this?
This was in 84.
You said they came in 80. Oh, okay. Never mind.
They came 2 years in a row.
Right. They came in 83, and a year later they came in 84. But that year they actually grabbed some people.
Yeah, and there were more reporters on the island than there were people being arrested at that time.
I know. We were mentioned earlier. We saw all the one new, and for anybody watching, like this is back when there were 3 major networks, and you typically had like a local station,
right.
and there's articles
like Dan Rather and. I forget.
It's funny too because everybody's so young. When we were watching it, I know Colby probably didn't recognize all these guys, but I'm like, oh, wow, look how young these guys are. Like there was one guy that was on there that
Peter Jennings
went on to be on 60 Minutes or 2020 or something,
right?
And was there till he was in his 70s, and now he's not even around anymore. And I looked at him and I was like, he's so young in this. But yeah, they had all the reporters there talking about how they were grabbing everybody. And
Mark Potter, he was one of their reporters.
And they were interviewing people. They interviewed the city councilman who was like, look, these guys have done. That was
Butler.
Yeah, these guys have done these guys have contributed to this entire community.
He's like,
Right. And then they interviewed a couple other people from the town who were saying the same thing. They said, look, these guys aren't. The one woman said these guys aren't. There's no violence.
We're not hurting anybody.
We're not hurting anybody. There's no violence. Nobody's getting killed. This isn't Miami. This isn't kind of like Cocaine Cowboys where they got Griselda Blanco and they're executing guys in the street. Like this is marijuana and they're all working together. And the whole town's built on that.
That was actually one of the reasons why I felt it was necessary to write this book the way I wrote it. And I actually had, gone down prior to to putting pen to paper and interviewing and letting people know once they heard that I was going to write this book, they decided that, if someone's going to write this, it should be somebody that was there, first of all,
right?
Somebody that actually knows what took place. And we wouldn't be willing to allow 30, 40 years from now, some journalist or some, historian to patch quilt together a story that they think took place.
Right.
This is actually how it took place.
It's funny. Just everything you're saying, like prior to going to prison, prior to interviewing all the different drug smugglers and distributors and guys that I've interviewed, like everything you're saying, like of course what you're saying is in the RV, which is different because I know guys that were like they would drive in with a vehicle with 300 pounds in the trunk, and then they'd leave the keys and they would just walk off. And then somebody else would, in a motel parking lot, would walk in, grab the keys, get in the thing. Right. And you actually have the option of saying, when they got grabbed, like, they don't know what's in the trunk.
Right.
I was told to come here and drop the car off and walk away. So, but yeah, you don't have that chance. You've got how many?
You're not getting away from that.
No, not from an RV. But same thing. But I know multiple guys who that's the dead drop. That's the drop the car,
yes.
Walk away, and 5 hours or even the next day, they'll bring it back and it's crisp and clean. You get the vehicle and leave.
Or they keep the car.
I had one guy, this guy right here, actually. This guy's name is Mike Hudson. His mother drove an RV. I want to say it was filled with marijuana. They may have been importing coke at that time, but because at one point they had started with marijuana, but just like most people in Miami, they moved to coke. It was started with marijuana, it became coke. But at one point, they stacked an entire RV filled with it. Same, just like you were saying, filled up. He's like literally, they couldn't go in the back. They had the curtains drawn. Right. It was all the way, and had driven it across country or something. Same RV, but I mean, like everything you're saying, like completely, like I've got bits and pieces, but nothing at the scope of what you're talking about. Right. With those numbers, it's always much more, and even their numbers are outrageous. Right. So their numbers are outrageous and their numbers are minuscule compared to your numbers. So anyway, I thought
in the scheme of things, it's all relative, really.
Yeah, well, they didn't have a whole town.
I didn't have a whole town doing it.
Or
there's a lot
the other way.
Yeah, but there are so mmany interesting stories that have yet to be told that obviously couldn't put it in the book. There's just there's 40 years of storytelling here, and and a lot of it's tongue in cheek, but a lot of it is, there's, some seriousness to it as well. But with regards to how I managed to get into the position that I got into was, of course, being that person chosen to drive that van, that Winnebago to Miami that day to go to the house that nobody ever goes to. Meeting these guys, and then when months later, when the arrests were finally being effected, and our fathers and uncles, older cousins and grandpas and everybody, and those guys are going to prison. Life magazine actually in this articles talk about a small town of mostly women and children because the entire male population went to prison.
Right.
So that being said,
but you're still around.
But I'm still around.
You were grabbed.
I was part of the kids.
Okay, so were you arrested?
They had no idea. No.
Oh, okay.
Dude, they had no idea.
So they just got
They got the visible, the older guys who were, I guess you would say running the show,
right? If
you will, for lack of a better way of putting it. But it's not like everybody knows he's the boss,
right?
There for I don't know, years. I didn't care. Even when I started taking things upon myself. I didn't care whose job it was. All I cared about was that paper bag getting slid across the kitchen table at me.
Right.
Because the way it works is if we bring this job in tonight, I don't get paid tomorrow. I get paid when that stuff starts to sell. So I'm getting paid for jobs that I did 2-3 weeks ago that I don't remember doing. You know, this is how it works.
Right.
And, you know, here's this job, here's this, but what's it from? I don't remember. God, that was like, you know, in the meantime, we've done 4, 5, 6 jobs. And I'm getting paid for the one I did 7 jobs ago. You know, that kind of thing. So nobody really knows whose job is who's getting paid to who, you know, because that's kind of how it needs to be. Nobody cares. None of the kids care as long as they're getting paid. So these guys go to prison. I'm the only visible face. Carlito and Leo come to Naples and Everglades and start looking for Timmy, because that's all they knew me by, in my face. It took them 3 weeks to find me. But they found me.
Right.
They found me at my house in Golden Gate, and I got a knock on the door one day and I opened up, and there's this guy, Jorge, from Miami, standing there in the doorway. He goes, Timmy! He's like, you know, like we're old buddies or some shit. And he says, you know, we got work backing up, man. He says, can you do this? Can you get this work done? And I just, like, without even hesitation, I said, oh, hell yes. And I just, out it came like that, right? Because we were the infrastructure. The kids, we were doing all the work, man. We knew how it was done. The only thing I didn't know at that point in time was how much to get paid, you know, where to get paid, where do I go to get the shit. So I learned that from.
Right. So the infrastructure it's still there, very much there. It's just.
It just needed management, which was in prison. So I took it upon myself to go and make sure I knew who to talk to, who to find, and, you know, from the other generations, who to talk to and this and that. And I wound up, because I was the only face they had seen, I was the face they came to. That's how I wound up working. And I said, well, hell yeah, I just went and got everybody back to work again.